Berlin is a city where you expect to see everything. With the cheapest beer available for 45 cents, there are people drinking everywhere midday. Everywhere you see travelers and hippies and artists scratching out a living, hanging out in trendy cafes and the parks, whilst the bourgeois parents feed their children falafel and soy milk, and are offset only by the die-hard punks with the facial tattoos and piercings, who strangely enough are the only ones who pick up the shit their dogs on a string leave behind, because they won't leave anything to the authorities. It's a city that's too big to ever really understand and changing too fast to ever really get a grip on it. And all you can do is just kind of dive in and see which way the currents take you as you flow through different social scenes through this immense biodiversity of Berlin society. And everywhere there is graffiti. Graffiti so big it covers whole sides of buildings in giant murals. Graffiti so good you wonder why it's not in a gallery, until you realize the whole city is a kind of a gallery, full of these secret exhibitions that you only get to see at random moments. Maybe you're on the metro and you pass beneath a tunnel, and just there, for a fleeting moment, you see this giant monkey's head sweating beneath an army helmet. Or you'll be cycling along somewhere one day and you'll hit the brakes as you see, covering the side of a building, a tumbling astronaut lost in space. Now, hearing that I liked graffiti, when I moved to Berlin, my friends recommended I go down to Warschauer Bridge, where some of the world-class exhibits could be seen. And I wasn't disappointed. As I stood there on the railway bridge looking across a bit of wasteland, there were some buildings rising up and enormous murals. The first was of a man wearing 2 gold watches with a chain running between them. But even better was the second building over. There were 2 men, each of them wearing masks, and each of them trying to tug off the mask of the other. But before I could really think what the artist was trying to say, I heard someone shouting behind me, and I turned to see a man who he seemed to be fighting with himself, with all accounts. And people walked around him, and I hung back to work out if he was a danger to anybody else or just to himself. He sees them. People always tell you to open your eyes. They never tell you how wide. I turned around to see an Englishman wearing an old army coat, cheap sunglasses and thin, unwashed hair, and of course a bottle of beer in his hand. I'm sorry, he sees what? Ignoring my question, he just continued. You know, 1,000 years ago, right, no one believed there was any such thing as electricity. But there was. 100 years ago, before Max Planck came along, they didn't think there was anything smaller than the atom. But there was. Nowadays, you tell a doctor you hear voices. He'll give you drugs to shut them up before he asks what they have to say. The man suffering the psychotic episode had crumpled against the wall, and he now sat back holding his head and shooting scared looks at the shadows as they passed him by. So you're saying that he sees something that we don't? Him and me both, pal. Yeah, but so how come you're not in the same state that he's in? I'm an artist, right? And artists, we swim in the same water that others drown in. Well, normally a statement that pretentious would have had me just walking away, but this is Berlin. I just arrived, and every new character was a new page for the mental scrapbook. Yeah, so What is it you both see that we mortals don't? Demons? I started to walk away, but he grabbed me by the arm and with his other hand reached into his pocket and withdrew a small green pill. And from the look of his dilated eyeballs, I guessed it must be drugs. East German industrial strength drugs. For those who have eyes to see, eh? I still don't know why I took it. Maybe because I'd recently rewatched The Matrix. And there in his military greatcoat and sunglasses, he looked for all the world like a pale, grungy Berlin version of Morpheus. Or maybe there's no such thing as free will. Maybe I'd already decided to take it the moment I started talking to him. Either way, just saying no didn't really feel like an option. I took the pill and washed it down with a swig of my friend's lukewarm beer, and he was now on a roll. See, everyone's looking for heaven. Oh, fuck heaven. I've been there, it's boring. It's hell that's worth a closer look. So yeah, where's that then? Starting to feel that aching, tingling feeling chew on the end of my nerves. It's right here, pal. His pale, unhealthy face began to distort, and it seemed that the drugs were kicking in faster than I thought. And then I became aware of something on his shoulder. Through the swirling, distorted air, there was something there. It was bigger than a cat or a ferret. And anyway, it had little hands and a face, and it was whispering into his ear, muttering dark words like a stream of poison. What's it saying? Oh, terrible things. It's not the only one. Look. I turned around to see a world gone mad. Everywhere in the daytime street scene were demons. Demons scurrying along the pavement, pulling at people's ankles. Demons fluttering through the air on fragile wings, landing on people's shoulders. Demons swinging from lampposts by their tails and singing disgusting songs. Covered in scales and pierced with horns, with scrabbling, grabbing pointed feet and hands. Begging and growling and crying through the air. I wanted it all to stop, and I tried to block my eyes and my ears, but one voice came floating through. Nobody need ever know. No need to tell the wife. After all, you work for your money. Why shouldn't you have a little bit of fun? And I saw a white demon with a bow tie and a walking stick standing by a rather confused looking businessman who hesitated in front of an erotic massage parlour. Then a bicycle went past, driven by a girl with a basket on the front, where a yellow demon with red eyes sat, looking very nervous. Faster! Faster! It cried. Don't you know what they want to do to you? They'd hold you down. They'd tear off your clothes. They'd... Have a drink, said a fat, grey demon next to a homeless man in a doorway. Go on, have a beer. You'll feel better. You know you will. Everyone else has already had their first beer. It's midday. Come on. I turned back towards the Englishman who was responsible for all of these visions. Make it stop. Oh, you don't like what you see? Personally, I find it quite inspiring. See, without them, I never could have drawn that. And I turned to see a mural that somehow had eluded me until then. Covering a side of a building, it was of a big pink monster. But the monster was made up of hundreds of bodies piled on top of each other, wrestling and squirming and climbing up, putting their feet on each other's faces. And the monster had one big pink arm comprised of bodies, and the arm in its hand held a naked white man, bringing him towards his mouth to be consumed along with all the others. We consume ourselves. Is that not the message? I turned to see a white demon fluttering in the air on moth-eaten wings that went too fast to even really see them. Now, you and I know there's no return to innocence. Pluck out your eyes, you'll still see. Cut off your ears, you'll still hear. It will never stop. I turned and ran. I pushed people out of my way. I ran across a road. I heard the screeching of brakes. I ran as fast as I could. I ran until my feet weren't touching the ground anymore, and I felt a terrible sense of weightlessness, and then an awful collision with the pavement. I tumbled over once or twice and lay in a beaten, bruised, painful wreck. You all right, mate? I opened my eyes to see a tourist with a camera around his neck and a map in one hand, looking down at me with concern. There are no more demons to be seen. You want one of these? Took a bit of a fall, eh? And he held out a small green pill in his palm. I shrank away. Suit yourself. I didn't like East German chewing gum at first either. You get used to it. I picked up my aching body. I walked back along the bridge where I saw a small crowd was forming. I pushed my way through to the front and looked down over the railway bridge, and I saw, lying on the tracks below, was the lifeless body of the man I'd first seen fighting the demons. I only hoped he could no longer see them.